Jennifer Pettit, and she is the founder of a group called WE, and that stands for Understanding Invisible Illnesses, UII. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Jennifer. I've invited Jennifer today because I think she has a lot to share about being an advocate for your illness, whatever that may be. And she's set a wonderful example to so many people online about how to create awareness and get a buzz going in your community as well as on the internet. So thank you for being with us today, Jennifer.
Thanks, Lisa. I've wanted to be part of this for a while. I'm glad I could be here.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about WE. And when I say we, people might start thinking of WE, but it's actually UII. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, WE, UII, which I came up with before the Wii game console, that seems to be important, is a grassroots effort that I've been doing since 2006 to raise awareness of invisible illnesses. I was diagnosed in 2001 with my first chronic invisible illness, and my experiences I went through showed me just how little the rest of society seemed to know about these types of illnesses that have so many features in common, even if the diagnoses are different. So I began working with my college on some projects to raise awareness, and it just grew from there. And now we exist on Facebook. I have a Twitter feed. I have a blog, and we do a lot of in-person work as well as online.
Why do you think it's important to kind of look at invisible illnesses and help people understand what those are?
I think it's important because so many people are affected by invisible illnesses. Either they have one themselves or they're very close to someone who does, a family member or a close friend. And I don't think people really consider just how many things fall into that group of invisible illnesses, everything from mental health issues through even cancers, which are a little more mainstream, so people don't want to lump them in with invisible illnesses that are considered this murky, misunderstood area.
Now, there's a lot of people who are listening who may be thinking that they would love to do something to increase awareness about their invisible disability or their particular disease, but it seems really overwhelming because they don't feel well to begin with. They very likely may not be even able to hold down a job, much less take on something extra, and they don't quite know where to start. But you've done a great job of gathering your resources and making sense out of this. So what are some ideas that you have about becoming an advocate in your community, especially when you're going on limited energy yourself?
I think the first thing that a person has to do is accept that about themselves, that they have this limit to their energy and their resources, and that anything they take on, including advocacy, is going to drain those resources, and not have these unrealistic expectations of themselves. We all hear those stories about the person with, 4 fake limbs who runs marathons, or, a chronic illness diagnosis that spends day and night working on some kind of project like this, worldwide, like you, Lisa. But they're almost discouraging sometimes because we can't all do that. And sometimes we feel like we're being told, well, this person could, why can't you? Well, we're not the same person. So the very first thing I think is to understand that about yourself and set goals that reflect what you have to work with. I can't run a marathon. I have no interest in running a marathon. I can't put day and night energy into even we. So I do what I can with the time I have and make myself feel good about that. So that's the first thing I think people have to do for themselves. In addition, they should probably take a look at what communities exist in their lives. I do work full-time, so I have my work community, and I'm sure we'll talk about all the things that I can do here, but I also have my college. While I was in college, I worked with them, and as an alumni, I work with them. I work with online organizations such as We Go Health, and even my church. I don't outright do a project at my church about invisible illnesses, but I know I've had an impact in that community. I've had several people come up to me either on Facebook or in person and tell me that they know me from church and they've seen my stuff online, and they are also affected in this way or another way. Recently, I had a woman, when I was walking through an open house, stop me and tell me that her mother has the same diagnosis I do. This woman's been following me on Facebook and is just intrigued by what I'm up to. And now I know that's somebody else that I'm reaching. So there's all sorts of communities in our lives. If you don't work, you still have a network of caregivers. You have professional and otherwise. If you have friends that are working with you or assisting you, or your doctors, even though it seems counterintuitive that they already have a medical degree, they should already understand all this, they a lot of times don't understand what life is like of a person with an illness. So it's important to look at where you could be making that difference.
Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your diagnosis and how that impacts you on a daily basis.
My what I consider my predominant diagnosis is Sjogren's syndrome. Those unfamiliar with this disease, it's an autoimmune disease, and it attacks primarily moisture-producing glands and connective tissue. So you may see me continually sipping over here. It's because my salivary glands are basically destroyed, and I have trouble producing saliva. So that causes a lot more problems than it might sound like. I have very extensive dental work done. Almost every tooth has a root canal or major filling at best. I also have, as I said, several comorbid conditions. I have fibromyalgia, dysautonomia, which is autonomic dysfunction, Raynaud's phenomena, which is commonly seen with Sjogren's syndrome and overlaps with dysautonomia. And I have localized scleroderma, which is actually the very first thing I was diagnosed with at 15. When I reached high school, I joined a color guard and spent a lot of time in the sun. And apparently, the sun is my trigger. And I started to lose hair. I have bald spots, actually. And I was constantly dehydrated. In fact, I was actually hospitalized for dehydration once, which I think is kind of bogus. And the good news was it led me to a faster diagnosis than most people get once they start pursuing the symptoms that strongly. On a day-to-day basis, growing up, it varied. In high school, I was first diagnosed, as I said, so I was going through very severe flares that could last several weeks at a time. I had to go on what we called a homebound program for part of the year. I was missing about a semester worth of time a year, so this allowed me to keep pace and graduate on time. In college, I went to Villanova University, and I give them a lot of credit that they didn't really know what to do with me. So we had to work together to figure it out, but that they were extremely invested in helping me succeed. It did take me an extra year to graduate because I couldn't carry the full course load the first 2 years, and I had trouble accepting that at the time, but now I'm perfectly content. I realize it's not the big deal I thought it was then. But I had to, as I said, take more like 12 credits instead of 15 or 18 for a while. I also had to make sure that I worked with the people doing scheduling, that I couldn't handle early morning classes. Mornings are just harder for me, and they still are. So it was an evolving process as my flares got more under control that allowed me to pick up the 15 credits a semester and finish what I was doing. I majored in what I wanted to major in. I minored in what I wanted to minor in. I worked with several offices on campus to do awareness projects, and we also work very closely with their nursing school program, which is very exciting. It's the idea of shaping our caregivers of the future. And they're extremely interested in what we talk about. When I graduated, I was anxious that I was going into public accounting, and I was very scared that I wasn't going to be able to handle that. Finally decided I just had to try, and I tried, and I'm here. So I work for KPMG, which is one of the big 4 accounting firms, and they have what we call diversity networks. So there are some that are based on ethnic affiliations, such as African American or Asian Island Pacific, but we also have one that was called the Disability Network. And that gave me a lot of hope that this was something they took seriously. We've since changed the name of the network to AIM, Abilities in Motion, and I'm extremely involved at the local and national level with this organization. And instead of holding me back, this has actually opened doors that people at my level don't have open to them. Within my first year with the firm, I had a sit-down face-to-face meeting with the head of our office, and we're one of the larger offices, so he's kind of a big fish, and it just goes on from there. So in my work life, it's become more a matter of dealing with individual symptoms as they come up. I am extremely fortunate that I have a good network of doctors helping me keep things under control, so I don't have the extensive flares that I did in school. But I do have the day-to-day symptoms. I do have to worry about what stress does to my body. And the good news is, as I did rise in the firm so far, I was promoted on schedule. I'm now a little more in charge of my own calendar. The firm worked with me to have a formal accommodation to reduce my travel. So I wasn't flying. I was driving out of town and staying overnight. That was still a big challenge for me. I now work on most of the clients in or around the city in my industry instead of the rest of my coworkers in this industry who would get sent to the next state very frequently. So they worked with me on that, and I work with them that I take, some clients some other people might not want, and it's been very, I think, symbiotic might be the word.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like rather than fighting against the reality of your different illnesses, you have embraced them to a certain degree and tried to learn how to understand them, and how to obviously let them benefit you in certain ways, even in your career life. How do you think that has affected your passion to be an advocate for others who live with invisible illnesses?
My mom says that when I was a child, she thought I was going to be a lawyer because I was always fighting, and I wasn't just fighting for my own opinions. I always wanted to defend somebody. So I think a kernel of that is probably just my natural personality. But as I said, I was diagnosed in high school at 15, and I think that being diagnosed with a progressive chronic illness so young really impacted how I perceived the things I should do in life. If I want to do something, I want to do it now. I don't know how long I can do it, or that I'll be able to do it. So it's very difficult for me to be patient with things I want to get done. And I think that's a good thing in advocacy. If you are a little too patient, it would be hard to ever make change because everybody will put you off. Sometimes you have to be that person that says, no, we need to look at this problem now. We need to find a solution now. If that solution won't work, why? And what can we do to change that? I think that we have a lot of experiences in common across invisible illnesses. If the thing I know that you discuss most often, Lisa, is rheumatoid arthritis, and I don't have rheumatoid arthritis, but I have conditions that have very similar experiences, we stand to learn a lot from each other and to help each other in a lot of ways. And maybe the estimate is 4 million Americans might have what I have, and that may not be a lot out of the entire U.S. population, but if you add me to the population with rheumatoid arthritis, with mental and behavioral disorders, with autism, which probably falls into that category, but it's such a popular topic right now, with lupus, with everything else that pops up here and there quietly in the media and then goes away. If you lump us together, we're a powerful force. And I always say, if you want a problem solver, turn to somebody with a disability or a chronic illness because they spend their lives problem solving. So I don't see why we should all solve the same problem over and over. We should build on each other's solutions and go farther faster.
Now, Jennifer, a lot of people may be going through an experience with their illness, and they would really like to help educate others, maybe not necessarily call attention to themselves, but at least call attention to other people who are out there hurting and going through experiences and having a real negative experience. They would love to get involved, but they just feel like it's too overwhelming, and they tend to think, why bother? Why should I get involved? There are people out there who are blogging every day, and I can barely figure out how to set up a blog. There are others who are out there, they're at marathons passing out pamphlets to the runners as they come in about how to do a fundraiser, but there's no way I can get up and be anywhere at 7 o'clock to help volunteer. It feels very, very overwhelming and frustrating. But I know you've overcome some of that, and you have some great ideas for people that would like to be involved.
This is going to sound like a cliche, but you have to find what works for you. If you are not a morning person, and I am not a morning person, then work on ways that you can try to spend time on a project at the time of day that's convenient for you and set it up to feed off at another time of day. So if you wake up in the middle of the night because that's part of what your challenges are, but then you're awake and could be productive, you can blog at that time. Set it up to post at a different time of day if you like. Blogs, the other benefit there is you can post anytime. People will find your blog post. So you may need to look at different media as well. It's very exciting to go to walks and support somebody else or have people there to support you. I didn't realize just how much that meant to people until the first Shogun's Walk in my area that I attended, and my family came, and I had this moment of enlightenment when I understood what that meant to people. But that's not the only way to support people. You can support them by letting them know that you're interested in what's going on. If you're trying to spread awareness about something, you just need to talk to somebody. I believe very strongly that if you're passionate about something or have a goal, that you should talk to as many people as you can about it, because that's how you find who else is interested in it and who might be able to help you. That's how I've accomplished a lot of what I've accomplished, is that I'm a talker, and that paid off. I used that to my advantage. We also have to remember that we aren't going to change the world ourselves, and measure our impact in a different way. I have a friend who blogs once in a while, and for the record, I don't blog every day either, but she blogs every once in a while about some of the challenges she goes through. She participates in a couple live panels, and I'd say most of the rest of the time she's fairly quiet about it. That's how she prefers to go through her day, not dwelling on it, and I fully respect that. But she told me one day, why bother blogging? Because I do it so infrequently that I doubt I have much readership. And I said, don't measure your advocacy in that way. Measure it in reaching somebody, one person. If you reached one person, that's better than no people. And to me, the advocate who reaches one person has accomplished what they need to accomplish. And anything beyond that is just gravy. Very exciting gravy, but gravy.
What are some of the advocacy projects that have been done in your workplace? I know you've done a lot there, and this may make some people nervous because when they have a job, they may feel like they don't want to be in anybody's face about it. They don't want to call attention to themselves, and it's a real personal decision. But if someone does want to do something in their workplace, I know you have some great tools for that.
Well, first I want to point out that part of the reason I work so hard on the projects with KPMG and I'm excited about what they do isn't just because it benefits me or even my coworkers. I think when we have a major company like KPMG doing this work and being recognized for it, that's a call to action to other companies. And when somebody is in an environment at work where they don't feel safe disclosing or asking for something they need, an accommodation. So KPMG can be a call to action to other companies who aren't living up to what our society needs of them, which is to embrace people with disabilities or illnesses and make the work environment safer and more pleasant for them. And companies stand to benefit a lot. And this isn't just my personal goal, this is the people at my company who work on these projects with me. We share this goal in common to make our environment better and to inspire other companies to jump on. So as I said, at KPMG, we have a formal network for this, and that is a big help. But the network is only a couple years older than my time with the firm, if that. I think it might only be 1 year older. And it took a lot of work for people to start that. So there's no reason people at another company couldn't start something similar. If you're at a company where they have any kind of support for or networking opportunities for any other reason, as I said, maybe ethnic groups or something like that, see if you can start one for people with a health condition. You might want to term it very carefully. People are scared of the word disability, but you could always ask. And in theory, nothing should be wrong with asking. But at our firm, since we have this network, we've been able to do a lot of interesting projects that I also think a company could do without this formal network. One that we have started very recently, last year was our first year, and Philadelphia was one of the first offices to do it, was we participated in Disability Mentoring Day, which we do in October as part of the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And we work with a local agency, well, local branches of a government agency actually, called OVR, or Office for Vocational Rehab. And I know every state has a similarly titled organization. They have individuals with some kind of disability, and the majority of them, it's an invisible disability, that they work with to get into the workplace if they needed some kind of skill building before they could go into the workplace, what have you. We work with them to identify people who meet our hiring qualifications. It's not an offer of employment, so there's no obligation to the firm from participating in this. But it does, expose us to some people that we would like to recruit. And what we do is we ask some of our professionals in the firm to volunteer that it's one-day obligation to be paired up with the people from the agency. We are not told necessarily what disability they have. They do not have to disclose. Some people choose to disclose, and I do encourage that because I think it helps us identify more specifically what the challenges are that person might face and what are some possible solutions. But they don't have to, and I'd say from last year's group, I only know what I think 2 people may be diagnosed with. So it's a perfectly effective event anyway, even if people are unwilling or afraid to disclose. We partner them up for the day, and they basically do job shadowing. We kind of leave the mentors a little bit of free rein to feel out what their mentee seems to want out of the experience based on their work experience and education. But we've had only positive feedback to date. It's a very inexpensive commitment. It could be as expensive as you want if you want to provide a lot of supplies and meals, or it could be done very cheaply. It's pretty much an issue of time, that if the employer is willing to let the employees within the company take that time for a mentoring day, that's the only real cost it requires. And as I said, it's no long-term obligation to the company. I think this is something a whole lot of companies of all sizes could be doing. We also have online sessions. We call them MSOs, but they're basically webinars, where we have somebody either within the firm or an expert from outside participate in a session on some common interest issue. We recently had a very successful session on chronic pain. We decided that was something that a lot of employees could relate to without feeling that it was disclosing too much personal information, and it's an extremely common experience across many, many conditions. And even people who do not have a diagnosis could relate to this. We got a lot of really good involvement and feedback from that event, and we're trying to see where we can go with that to keep the momentum up on supporting each other. We found that's a big thing, is when you can help employees find other employees in the firm with a similar experience, and then they share what they're going through. Just the emotional benefit of that sharing has been huge, but also they can help each other problem solve. We had a session recently after the chronic pain webinar where we did a phone call, and there were several people with similar shoulder problems that discussed how they handle this travel challenge, how they talk to their team about what they're going through. My family, fortunately, is extremely supportive, and that does have a big influence on how successful I can be in advocacy work. My husband is actually back in school for nursing, so since he has that medical bent, that does help. He can understand a little bit more what I go through, as well as understand my limitations. My whole family has medical issues, which goes hand in hand with my own diagnoses. There's usually a genetic predisposition, and if you look through my family tree, it's a very odd-looking tree, medically speaking, and we do have a lot of conditions in there. So the upside to that is we do understand each other. That being said, we do have to each learn how to prioritize things in our lives. I do work a demanding job. My advocacy is very important to me, and I do get involved in several projects at a time. It's always been my nature to take on more than I really should at one shot. I'll be working on WE projects, as well as AIM network projects for KPMG, as well as working with the Sjogren Syndrome Foundation, and it can spiral out of control pretty quickly. So I do try to make myself do self-checks on, first of all, if I had to pick between the projects I'm working on, which are my favorite, or which do I think have the biggest impact, or in which are people most relying on me. I don't want to let people down if I can help it, but that once I've put them in order, the ones at the bottom may have to go. I just recently had to back out of something I was supposed to work on because I realized another priority had moved in. And they're not always other projects. They are the rest of our lives. I work.
Is there a general piece of advice that you would give others when they're trying to come up with their advocacy goals?
I alluded to this earlier. I have a general piece of advice that I give everybody for everything. And it's the best piece of advice I ever received. And I actually got it from a partner at KPMG while I was interning. And he told me, if you have a passion or a goal, talk about it all the time to everyone you can, because you never know who's going to be in a position to help you or also interested in the same thing, and that's additional resources. That's true everywhere I go and everything I've worked on. It also works well with my personality. As I said, it was important to me that I go to work in a company where I could feel safe disclosing my conditions and what my needs are because of them, because that's such an integral part of who I am. Not that I identify as my condition, but it's there. And I could not possibly go any period of time without somebody understanding that, without being able to talk about it. I had a part-time job in college where I didn't disclose for the first few months, and it worked out okay, but it was part-time, and I knew it wasn't forever. And I did eventually disclose. I think if I couldn't have disclosed safely, then I would have had to find another job, because I couldn't go much longer just comfortably not talking about it. So I do believe that even if you don't want to announce to the world that you have XYZ diagnosis, that if you care about something, whether it's awareness for a cause or a personal need or something, that you find the people you can talk to and you talk to them. And that's opened more doors than I could imagine, and I get very excited when I meet somebody new about what new door it might open, for them as well as me. I try to make sure that I'm also that door for other people. And that helps me feel fulfilled in what I do. So when I can connect somebody who, for some reason, this is the common one I get, someone who's been diagnosed with migraines, with people I know who've been dealing with migraines for many years, who know a lot of the tips and tricks and triggers and ways of coping, and even just the ability to understand what that person goes through, and I can connect them, then I feel like I've done my job.
Tell us a little bit about your website and what people can find there.
Yes, on my blog, which is my primary website, if you will, for the time being, I am a little late on post in the past couple months, but there is a lot of material if you're willing to go back through my archives. I've written about practical things like how to build a family history for medical reasons, and why I've chosen to disclose, and how I've dealt with certain emotional challenges from that. I've also just told kind of funny stories about what it's like to, go somewhere and have certain challenges that are inherent with the nature of my illness, and what it's like to get through them. And there's also a lot of connections to other bloggers and other types of networks and sites that people could turn to for everything from, there's between 550 and 600 members at any given time on that group, and some of them prefer to remain quiet, but every once in a while they'll chime in or send me a message, and I know that they're reading and they're getting things out of it. So it's, as I said, it's open, which means that if you do join and post anything, other people can see that, even if they're not members of the group. But there's a lot of people like myself, or just people who don't consider themselves advocates but have a lot of information, who are willing to share it on there. And even if you read through, you can be very inspired, not just to do great things, but to be happy in your life, which is the greatest thing of all.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Jennifer.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm looking forward to all the other presentations for this week.